Good evening. I'm calling the Monday, May 5th, 2025 Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. The Burnsville's Parks and Natural Resources Commission meetings are currently being conducted in person. Members of the public may attend the meeting in person, online via Zoom, or by calling in. Additional instructions on how to participate are posted on the www.burnsvillemn.gov website and in the public meeting calendar. As usual, tonight's meeting is also available for viewing on BCTV and on the city's website. If you are unable to participate in this evening's meeting and would like to submit public testimony, I encourage you to email your comments to city staff or mail your comments directly to City Hall. Before we move to the agenda items tonight, I'd like to take a few moments to recognize the contributions of our outgoing chair, Shannon Woolman. Shannon has served on this commission for 2 terms as the chair and for about 4 or 5 years as a member of the commission. Under her guidance and leadership, this commission has met its duty to make recommendations on issues related to parks, natural resources, and open spaces. She has led us with grace and humor and a welcoming demeanor. I believe I speak for this commission and the city of Burnsville when I say it's been a privilege to serve with you, Shannon. Thank you so much for your service to our community.
Now I'm gonna cry. Thank you.
So now we'll move on to the agenda. The first item of the Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting tonight is the adoption of the agenda. Do any members of the commission have any changes to the agenda? Staff, any changes to the agenda?
Nothing from staff.
May I have a motion for the adoption of the agenda, please?
I move to adopt. A second.
A second. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion has passed. Now we are on to item 2 of the agenda, considering the approval of the April 7th, 2025 Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting minutes. Commissioner, are there any changes to the minutes? Staff, are there any changes to the minutes?
Nothing from staff.
May I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 7th?
I so move.
Any second? Seconded? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion has passed. Item number 3 on our agenda is citizen comments. This is the opportunity for residents in the audience to address the commission on any parks and natural resources related issues. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Has anybody signed up, JJ?
Mr. Chair, I'm waiting to hear from our control room, but it doesn't look like anybody has signed up online.
Okay.
And there was nobody that had signed up prior to the meeting.
Very good. In that case, we will move on to Caleb Ashling presenting the Deer Management Program report for this past year. Caleb?
All right. Well, thank you for having me, commissioners. And yeah, I'm here to present our annual deer management update. And as mentioned, my name is Caleb Ashling. I'm a natural resources specialist for the city of Burnsville. So just a little history on deer management. The city's first natural resources master plan in 1999 recommended that the city develop a deer management program. And that led to the city council adopting the deer management plan in 2001. And one of the big things that did was set a population density goal for the city of 15 to 25 deer per square mile of habitat. There's a few different reasons why this program was created. One was deer car collisions. Obviously, if the deer population is higher, we're more at risk for more vehicle deer related incidences. When the deer population is higher, you can also have negative impacts to natural area from overbrowsing of deer on some of our native plant species. Then residents will have more issues with landscape depredation at a high deer population. Then there's also more risk for disease. So there is chronic wasting disease now in Dakota County. It hasn't been found in Burnsville, but that's a deer disease that can be spread at higher deer populations. So it's another reason to have a deer management program. So what I'll be doing tonight is reporting on our past program year and then making recommendations for our upcoming program year. And just to note that our program year is run from April 1st of the following year to March 31st of the current year. And I'll be breaking the presentation down into 4 parts. So education, feeding ban, monitoring of the deer population, and then population control. So on the education side of things, the main way we do education is through the city website, and then also our city newsletter, and then periodically through social media as well. And the big thing that we try to educate on is the deer feeding ban. So people know that it isn't allowed per city ordinance, and now county ordinance as well, to feed deer in Burnsville. And we did not have any feeding violations documented in 2025, but we recommend continuing to monitor, and then if we do find a feeding violation, then we send letters out to that property. Then on to monitoring of the deer population. So there's 2 main ways that we monitor the population. One is through aerial counts conducted by helicopter, and the other is through tracking car deer crashes. So for monitoring, we break the city into 6 different management zones: the northeast, northwest, west central, east central, southwest, and southeast zones, generally broken down by some major roadways in town here. And our most recent aerial survey was conducted this past.
Hands up! Hands up! Hands up! Do not move! Do not move!
Mark, you want to grab the doors, please? Or Daryl?
That was interesting. Caleb, would you like to continue? Have we verified that that was training?
Yeah.
Pretty confident.
Okay. All right, very good. Our apologies for the interruption. Caleb, please continue. Thank you.
Take the water here. All right. So yeah, our aerial survey was last conducted in February 21st. And we work with the Three Rivers Park District to have aerial surveys conducted. They also fly Murphy-Hanrahan Park partially in Burnsville, and then they fly for other cities in the area, so it works out well to have them fly our survey as well. And this is a picture of what it looks like to see deer from the air here. So this is the results of our most recent survey. You can see the map on the left has actual locations where deer were observed and how many were observed in those areas. The total population or count was 265. The biggest area or the biggest zone was the northeast zone that had 102 deer. The East Central Zone had quite a few as well, 62. That includes City Hall here, but also Terrace Oaks Park, Wolk Park, Walden neighborhood. And then the Northwest Zone was the 3rd highest. And in general, that's a fairly high count. Our last survey was done 2 years ago, actually. Last winter, we didn't have enough snow to conduct a survey. The survey 2 years ago was 106. Which was probably a little bit of a low count that year. But because of the last count, we didn't do any deer management this past winter, so not surprising that the count was up a little bit. Then deer car crashes is another way that we monitor the deer situation here in Burnsville. We track that by getting records from the police department on any deer vehicle-related incidences, and then we also cross-reference that with carcass pickups from the city's animal control contractor. So the total collisions this past year were 52. The most were in the southeast zone. That includes Magnet Park, Wood Pond area. The next highest was that east central zone, the City Hall, Terrace Oaks area, followed by the southwest zone. And in general, that's in the range that we've seen, 40 to 50 crashes over the last 5-6 years. So we recommend continuing those two major annual monitoring methods. One thing we're recommending to remove from monitoring is our deer exposure survey plots. So if you walk out at Terrace Oaks Park, you may have noticed that there's some large fenced-off areas near the west entrance to the park. The city installed those in the early 2000s as part of a deer vegetation survey. Some fenced areas the deer can't get to. There's other plots that the deer can access. And overall, it was a way to monitor deer impacts on vegetation. And then since that time, over the last 6 years, we've also used those to monitor habitat restoration work, controlled burning, along with deer impacts as well. But we feel that we have collected enough information to have a good data set on this, and we think it's time to remove these so this area can be managed along with the methods used for the rest of our restoration site out there. Then on to population control. So there's two different strategies that are used for population control. The first is archery hunting, and the second is sharpshooting. And typically I would present on any population control that happened this past program year, but like I mentioned, due to the lower previous aerial count, we didn't do any population control this past winter, so I don't have any information to report there. But as far as recommended harvest for this upcoming program year, so with a higher count, we do have more recommended harvest this upcoming year. So this table has the units on the left side, followed by the population goal. That's the goal population for those zones. Then the projected fall population is the survey results, factoring in fawn birth and some natural mortality. And that gets us to the harvest range for this upcoming year. So that's the recommended harvest range for each zone. The northwest zone, the city doesn't have any property or parkland to access, so we can't conduct management in that area. In the west central zone, minimum harvest recommendation would be 12, southwest 3 to 20 deer, northeast 87 to 108, east central 64 to 72, southeast 12 to 15. So for sharpshooting, staff recommend sharpshooting in the southeast part of town, east central part of town, and the northeast units. The west central unit, we could conduct sharpshooting according to the plan, but because of the population is lower there and we tend to have less vehicle incidences there, we recommend focusing on these other areas this year. And then we also recommend conducting archery hunts in southwest Burnsville. Historically, most of the management done in southwest Burnsville has been through archery hunts. So we recommend hosting the archery hunt at Kelleher Park. This is run through an organization called the Metro Bow Hunters Resource Base, which is a nonprofit that does hunts in city parks like ours. Then the Three Rivers Park District also will be hosting an archery hunt at Murphy-Hanrahan Park Reserve, a portion of which lies within Burnsville. And we'd recommend council adopt the resolution for special archery hunts in 2025. Kelleher Park and Murphy-Hanrahan Park are essentially a combined hunt currently. The Three Rivers Park District has been willing to merge their hunt into the Kelleher hunt and kind of organize them both with the Metro Bow Hunters resource base. So those hunts will are proposed for October 10th through 12th and November 14th through 16th. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
I just have one. When they do the hunts, do they close the parks then to visitors or people hiking?
Yeah, in Kelleher Park, the city park, we close the section that is being hunted. The regional trail, which isn't in the hunt area, stays open. The Three Rivers Park District generally doesn't close their parks.
So, Caleb, it's interesting to note that the Northeast has the largest population, but the fewest deer-automobile interactions. Is that a polite way to say that? So do we know why that happens that way? Is it because there's more area away from the roads, or do we have barriers in place that keep the deer from meandering into those areas?
Yeah, that's a good observation. My interpretation, I noticed that as well. My interpretation is that there is a lot of habitat in that area. So that contains the wildlife refuge area. So there's a lot of area for the deer to be and not have to cross roads. So I think that's probably the biggest reason. Some of the other parts of town, the deer are in smaller parks, and they're probably moving in between those parks a lot more often, which just increases the likelihood of them having to cross a road and have a vehicle incident.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. So I first want, if it's readily available, like if you know, the deer exclosure survey plots, you said that there was a vegetation survey to study the deer, the impacts of the deer and other, like what were the findings of that?
Yeah, so the findings were some species were impacted more than others. So in some area, or some particular species, gooseberry was one. We saw a higher percent cover of that inside the fenced areas than outside the fenced areas. So it appeared that there were some species that were preferentially browsed by deer, that they target more than others. And then just in general, there was a higher percent cover of vegetation within the fenced areas than outside the fenced areas. So deer were having an impact on the vegetation that was there. But it wasn't necessarily a drastic impact. And with our study, there was population control going on throughout that time period. So the deer population may have been higher at times, but also lower at times. So it wasn't a study you may find online. There's some of these in northeast part of the country where in the fenced area it's green with lots of vegetation, and outside there's nothing. That wasn't the results that we found because the deer population was being managed throughout the population. So our results were a little more nuanced.
Thank you. And then my question is between archery and sharpshooting, other than, is it proximity to population that determines which location gets which form or, of hunting?
Yeah, I think part of it is the size of the park. Kelleher Park is a bigger park. It isn't as developed around it. There aren't as many trails in there, so it's a lot easier to host an archery hunt without it impacting a lot of activities or other park users who want to be in the park during that time period. Southwest part of Burnsville also has some archery hunting on private land. And city ordinance does allow that if you have enough property, and there are some larger lots down there. So there are residents who archery hunt down in that area as well. So that's one of the reasons that archery hunting is more the main control method for that southeast zone. But in the rest of Burnsville, typically there's not enough land for private hunting, and also hosting those archery hunts on parkland, say like Terrace Oaks that has a lot of public use is a lot more challenging.
Thank you. Okay, and then I have one more. So you mentioned dates for the archery. Are those the dates for all of Burnsville or just those regions?
So the archery hunt is specifically for the hunts at Kelleher Park and Murphy-Hanrahan Park. Sharpshooting would be conducted by the Burnsville Police Department later in this year.
Okay.
Sharpshooting is typically in January and February, and there aren't exact dates for sharpshooting. It depends a lot on weather conditions and staff availability.
Your question led another thought to mind, and that is, if we have records of what the preferred plants the deer really liked, that'd be nice to know, because then I'm not gonna plant them. And we hear deer resistant when we go to, to plant stores and stuff, but if we know the deer, what did you, the berries?
Gooseberry. was
Gooseberries,
one
yeah,
species,
so, but if there are like 4 or 5 of them, it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna put those in my garden, because that'll only attract them. So if there's a way to put that information out, that might be really helpful for us trying to naturalize our backyards.
Sure.
But then if it's planted, does that count as feeding the deer?
Well, that's another
You
thing.
knowingly plant gooseberries.
Anyway, I thought.
I have one question.
Sure.
So after the sharpshooting happens,
Yep.
what happens to the deer?
Yeah, they're processed, and then the meat is donated to a local food shelf.
Thank you.
I think this was the last one. So,
It's okay, I have one too.
okay, great. So, I had another one, a question kind of a question come up in my head around the Burnsville Police Department then in these regions. So would it be at the nature habitat preserve? Are there specified locations in these certain regions? And did you mention them, and are they in this report and I didn't see them?
I don't believe that they're in the report. We do take a look at where the deer are most prevalent at the time where sharpshooting is occurring. But in general, we have some designated areas that are carefully selected with our police department to make sure that they're safe for sharpshooting. And sharpshooting occurs at a specific site. So it's not park-wide. There's one specific site, typically a deer stand that the sharpshooters are in, and then a backdrop for safety where the sharpshooting is occurring.
That's it. Thank you.
Hypothetically speaking, so before 1999, before this master plan of deer management, getting into the weeds here a little bit, but if there wasn't a deer management plan, like how quickly do they multiply? Like what's worst case scenario, I guess? Like we have thousands of deer running around, or would it just kind of naturally filter out? It's okay to not have the answer to that, too.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a perfect answer for that. I would say that, population is usually, roughly maybe half male and female. Most of the adult does are gonna have twins every year. So that can grow the population pretty quick when most of the adult females are gonna be having twins most years. And there's not a lot of checks on the population as far as animals that are going to be controlling the deer. So I'd say I think the population would be significantly higher. You'd likely see a lot more vehicle collisions, that type of thing, and more of the issues like landscape depredation or potential disease issues. But I don't know, I can't say for sure where that max might be, where it would top out. But,
Okay, fair. Thank you.
Is there consistency every year with where the crashes are occurring?
There is definitely some areas that are more consistent, yeah.
Is there a way to decrease risk of crash, other than getting rid of the population, of course?
I know there is some signage at some of those locations. As far as other ways, not that I'm aware of. There's not really space for some other areas or highway systems that might have animal crossing or underpasses, but not really a lot of space for that in city areas.
I'm thinking of that section along near Portland Avenue and 42. It's basically wooded right up to the road. And so I can, yeah. And since the deer don't read those signs, they're, it's up to us. And yeah, in the middle of the night, that's an easy thing. Yeah.
Commissioners, Caleb is looking for a motion to recommend to council to approve the deer management plan with the special hunt dates at this point.
I so move.
I second. Oh,
You can take it. You take it. Your last one, you take it.
Thank you. It's very kind.
Your last deer
Okay,
management.
so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Caleb, you're still up for the water quality report.
All right, my next presentation here is our annual State of the Lakes presentation, which is an update that we give to share some of the water quality information that the city has on 8 of our priority water bodies here in town, as well as highlight any projects that may have been recently completed or are upcoming on the lakes. This is Keller Lake here. So I'm going to be looking at that water quality information in 2 different ways. One way is going to be according to the state water quality standards. And the main standards that the city works with are the nutrient or eutrophication standards for lakes. A lot of that relates to how much algae is produced in these lakes. And there's 3 parameters under that nutrient standard, phosphorus, chlorophyll A, and then a clarity reading. And there's different standards depending on whether it's a shallow lake, which tend to be harder to manage and have more nutrient issues, or if it's a deeper lake. Crystal Lake is the main deep lake here in Burnsville. And if a water body fails to meet 2 or more of these parameters over a 10-year period, it ends up on the state impaired waters list. Burnsville currently has 2 impaired waters, Alamagnet Lake and Keller Lake. Crystal Lake was removed from the impaired waters list in 2018. Early Lake, I think around 2012, was removed as well. And the other way we look at water quality is according to the city's water resources plan. The city's plan has clarity goals that generally exceed the goals of the state. For clarity, this information, along with our phosphorus data, is collected by volunteers. So shout out to our volunteers for getting that important information for us. And for clarity, what they do is they lower what's called a Secchi disc into the water. That's on the right side of the photo here. They lower that down until they can't see it anymore. And then that depth is the clarity reading for that particular trip. And then the clarity readings from June to September are added together and averaged for a season-wide average. So looking at clarity, I'm going to start by highlighting our impaired waters. So Alamagnet Lake, the goal for clarity is 1.3 meters. And we're currently at 0.9 meters over the last 3 years on average. So not meeting that city goal yet. Then on Keller Lake, our other impaired water, the goal is 1 meter, and we're currently at 1.3 meters over the last 3-year period. On the other water bodies, we're either meeting or exceeding that clarity goal, with the exception of Sunset Pond, which is slightly below that clarity goal, with the goal of 1.7, the 3-year average of 1.5. All right, so the next part of the presentation, typically I run through each lake fairly quickly and highlight the water quality and any projects. My understanding is that commissioners asked for some additional information on Alamagnet Lake, So I'm going to have some expanded information here about Alamagnet Lake and then return to kind of our typical shorter version for the other lakes. And this is a photo of Alamagnet Lake here that the city of Apple Valley took from a drone a few years back. Alamagnet Lake, a really beautiful lake. It's got parkland all along the southern side of the lake and some of the side portions as well, which is pretty unique to have so much parkland surrounding a lake. And then the north side of the lake has homes on it. And it's both in Burnsville and Apple Valley, and the cities work together on management along with the Vermilion watershed. So Alamagnet Lake has about a 1,400 acre watershed. So it's got a pretty good sized watershed. This map here shows the watershed broken up into different sub-watershed zones. Generally, water is not moving directly from the lake from this whole area. It's typically moving through different ponds or other water quality detention areas and makes its way to the lake through those different areas. The lake itself is about 109 acres. Then Alamagnet Lake is a shallow lake, so definitely in that shallow lake category according to standards. The western arm of the lake is typically 6 to 7 feet deep. The eastern arm is a little deeper. It's 10 to 11 feet deep in that area. And then like a lot of impaired waters in the metro area, it has times where it can be really picturesque and beautiful, and there are other times where it can have significant algae blooms like you see on the photo on the right here. It can have some good years and some bad years, and even within each year there's going to be time periods where there's more algae blooms and other times where it's more clear. And taking a look more specifically at our water quality information here, starting with the water clarity information. So this is an inverted bar chart. So the farther down these blue bars go, that means the better the clarity is, or the farther down you could see that clarity disk over this June through September time period. And you can see that there's been some ups and down patterns on the lake. And that's been even going back farther past a 20-year period. There's been a number of these cycles and ups and downs. 2011 in this 20-year period is the highest out of this range. So water clarity had improved over that time period. It did backslide for a number of years. In the last 6 years, from about 2019 onward, we've had some more consistent clarity readings, but still not meeting that state standard of 1 meter. Been above it a few times and close a number of other years, but not meeting it every year. But we're hopeful that some of these recent more stable time periods, that we can keep that up. And I think there's some reason to be optimistic about that. We've been working on installing different watershed projects, which I'll mention, which help slow phosphorus inflow into the lake, which wasn't previously in place. And we're also working on some in-lake phosphorus management. But we'll have to collect the data and see over time how this trend continues. And this is the phosphorus data for the last 20 years. And you can see that it has a similar up and down pattern. If you look to 2011 here, that has the lowest phosphorus, so just below the state standard in that year. Mirrors really well with the clarity, so that was the best clarity year. So the phosphorus and clarity readings typically have a pretty strong relationship. And so one thing that the cities have been working on along with the watershed is installing projects within the watershed that are going to reduce nutrient inflow into the lake. And this highlights some of those different projects that have been installed. Some of these have been installed by the city of Apple Valley, and then some by the city of Burnsville. There's been a couple of rain gardens that have been installed, an iron-enhanced sand filter, and the Park Avenue infiltration system. So all these projects help us reduce the amount of phosphorus that's flowing into the lake on an annual basis. These are photos of a couple of the bigger projects installed on the Burnsville side. One is this Park Avenue infiltration filter that's on the west side of the lake. This system helps remove phosphorus that's coming out of that portion of the subwatershed. And then on the north side of the lake, on the right here, is the Deeg Pond Iron Enhanced Trench. This trench fills up with water when there's rain events, so the pond gets water flowing into it, fills up with water. That water filters through the sand media that you see, which is mixed with iron. The iron binds with phosphorus, so when water is coming out of the system, it is cleaner. And from here, it flows down to Alamagnet Lake. So it's typical to work on watershed improvements first. So trying to slow the amount of phosphorus that's coming into the lake as sort of the initial goal. And then after there's been some work done in the watershed to look at what you can do to manage the internal load. And the most common way to do that is through an alum treatment or an aluminum sulfate treatment. That's something that a product that's added to the water that binds with phosphorus, both initially in the water column, and it also precipitates down to the bottom where it can rest until there's phosphorus released from the sediment in the future, and it can bind in the future with that phosphorus release as well. So it really helps with, you have a lake that's had phosphorus flowing in for years and years, and a lot of that phosphorus stays in the lake, so it builds up over time, and it just cycles from plants to algae to sediment. So it helps address that phosphorus that's built up in the lake that you can't manage through the watershed projects. So in 2023, the Vermilion River Watershed conducted a feasibility study on whether the lake was a suitable candidate for alum. It found that it was a suitable candidate for it, and then the watershed applied for a grant for the actual treatments, which they received. The first round of alum was conducted this past fall, and this is an actual photo that Apple Valley captured of the applicator out on Alamagnet Lake. And then the second round of alum is planned for 2026. And it's typical to split those treatments up. You get a little more impact out of the treatment if it's spread out a little bit. And also you don't want to apply too much alum all at once to a lake, so it's beneficial to spread those treatments out. And Alamagnet Lake alum is a good tool, both for binding with that phosphorus initially, but also helping to restore some natural processes in lakes. So if you have a lake that has a lot of algae issues typically, it will help bind up some phosphorus, resulting in clearer water, which allows more plant growth. Plants can help compete with algae, so you get less algae over time because the plants are present. Plants also help stabilize sediment. They even help provide more refuge for things like zooplankton, which are tiny little grazers on algae in the lake. So the alum doesn't just bind the phosphorus, it does help restore some natural processes that help hold that lake more in a clear water state. And that kind of leads into another major part of lake management, and that is aquatic plant management. So the city has some different goals related to aquatic plant management, including management of invasive aquatic plants, maintaining recreationability, protecting water quality, so making sure that we're being careful in how we manage plants so we don't disrupt some of those benefits that I talked about that plants provide, and also trying to protect and improve native aquatic plant species. So the city of Burnsville has a consultant that does plant surveys on Alamagnet Lake each year. This is a map on the left of the different survey points that are monitored. They collect a rake sample, like you see in the photo here, and identify the density of different species and the types of plants found. And some of the most significant problems on Alamagnet Lake are the two invasive plants, Eurasian water milfoil and curly-leaf pondweed, along with the fact that it has pretty low native plant diversity. Typically 2 to 3 species are present. A lot of our other lakes that aren't impaired would have maybe 8 to 10 native plant species, so native diversity is low. This is an example of the typical information that the city receives from those plant surveys. So on the left is a map of curly leaf pondweed. The red dots are denser areas, green is lighter growth. And from that, the cities can make decisions on plant management needs for the lake. So this survey here is from April 10th of this year, and the cities did have a contractor conduct an herbicide treatment on the lake to deal with the most problematic areas of curly leaf pondweed. And then on the right here is a map for Eurasian water milfoil. This one is for last year. Typically, Eurasian water milfoil starts growing a little later in the season, but we use this type of information to make decisions on any milfoil control. And then kind of leading into native aquatic plants. So one thing with an alum treatment and potential clearer water, and talking about maybe increased plant growth in the coming years, the cities wanted to take a look at what types of seeds might be in the lake seed bank. So there are seeds at the bottom of the lake. A lot of times they're waiting for an opportunity to germinate if conditions improve. And so the cities worked with the University of Minnesota to have what they call a seed bank study done. The university came out and collected samples from a number of different areas in the lake. They grew those samples out in a lab where they can identify the different types of plants as they germinate and grow, and then they provide the results of that survey to us. Sometimes you can find that there's more native plants in the seed bank that they were there historically, they've been dormant for a while, but they are there and may pop up when conditions improve. For Alamagnet Lake, we found primarily that the seed bank is a couple of native species that we knew and the invasive species. There was one or two other species that were present in really low numbers, but it didn't appear to have a robust native seed bank of other species. So that kind of leads into the next project that we're going to be working on this summer, which is trying to increase some of those native aquatic plant species in the lake, because we are trying to control invasive species, but like I mentioned, plants are beneficial to the lake, and something will grow there, so we'd rather it be native species than these invasive species. So we're working with the University of Minnesota to collect probably 4 or 5 different species of native aquatic plants that were likely historically in the lake, and then planting them. First, we're using this cove because it's out of the way of boat traffic, but planting them in this cove. And then the University of Minnesota is going to monitor the planting over time to see how well it takes and then spreads. And it's for the University of Minnesota, part of a larger study across the metro area on similar types of projects. So it's exciting for us to be involved with that. All right, so that was the Alamagnet kind of enhanced information. So I'm going to go back through our other 7 lakes and hit on the water quality information that we have for those. So Lac La Vanne Lake is down in southeast Burnsville. It's a former gravel pit with a really small watershed. So water quality on Lac La Vanne has always been really good. The bar chart here is for phosphorus. This is a shallow lake, so the state standard is 60 parts per billion for phosphorus. That's the orange line here. So for all these tables that are coming up or charts that are coming up next, we want to be below that orange line. You can see Lac La Vanne is below that orange line for all of these. You can kind of see 2020 through 2023, we had more drought years. Some water bodies did better when there was less runoff. Lac La Vanne, because of its small watershed, and lower water levels during that time period, the phosphorus levels actually went up, clarity went down a little bit, but still meeting state standards. Then Keller Lake. For Keller Lake, we've seen improved phosphorus levels over the last 6 years. That corresponds with the alum treatments that were conducted, I believe, in 2019 and 2021 on that lake. So we've been able to maintain the benefits of reduced phosphorus on the clarity chart, like we discussed, mirrors this improvements as well. Just an example of a project on Keller Lake and some of the ongoing maintenance that the city does for water quality improvement projects. So in 2018, this large underground detention basin was installed in Crystal Beach Park. Essentially, it traps runoff as it filters through the system and collects sediment and phosphorus. You have to periodically remove that sediment and muck from the system to make sure it's continuing to work effectively. And so it was scheduled for its first removal last year, and there was 330 cubic yards of material removed. So a lot of material that was prevented from getting into Keller Lake through the system. And these types of projects can take continued investment to maintain them over time and make sure they're continuing to work effectively. So for Crystal Lake, as I mentioned, Crystal Lake was removed from the impaired waters list in 2018, and water quality continues to be good on Crystal Lake. So we've been meeting standards out there for quite some time. And we have plans for boat inspections on Crystal Lake. So for quite a few years, the city has been getting a grant from the county to hire boat inspectors that monitor boats coming in and out of the lake to look for invasive species like zebra mussels to try to prevent any new infestations. We also received a grant to do some early detection surveys around the boat launch area for new invasive species. Then we do annual aquatic plant harvesting for curly-leaf pondweed out there to manage that invasive. Twin Lake, so South Twin Lake receives water directly from Crystal. These next few lakes are all kind of in a chain of water as it flows down to the Minnesota River. Twin Lake is a small, shallow lake, but has pretty good water quality and has been meeting state standards for a long time. You can kind of see interesting pattern here with this one as well. The drought years were a little worse for it. Since it does receive a lot of water from Crystal, and Crystal water being pretty clear or low phosphorus, when Crystal is outletting quite a bit, when the rain is higher, Twin Lake water quality is better. So last year with more rainfall, the phosphorus levels were lower on Twin again. Wood Pond, another small water body just west of Alamagnet Lake, has been meeting standards pretty consistently since 2012. There was an alum treatment conducted on this water body, I believe in fall of 2018. And we've seen some consistent improvements in phosphorus since that alum treatment was conducted. Early Lake is another shallow water body moving to the southwest part of town. The water quality is a little more up and down there, but we've been kind of at or below state standards on that water body for some time as well. And then Sunset Pond. So Sunset Pond, as I mentioned, the 3-year clarity goals, or we're a little below the clarity goals over the last 3-year period. We've also seen some blips in the total phosphorus that are above the standard. In general, we're still meeting it the majority of the time on Sunset Pond, but that's something we'll keep an eye on to see if there's any specific trend developing there, or if it's just a few blips in a particular year. Then pond and lake buffers, my understanding was commissioners asked for a little bit of information about that. So on lakes, the buffer area pretty much right at the shoreline and below is managed by the Minnesota DNR, below what they call the ordinary high water mark, which is about where water might be at a typical spring water level. The state also has a standard for 50-foot buffer of perennial vegetation around public waters, but that does include things like turf grass. Perennial vegetation would just be not annual crops, especially like corn or something like that. On ponds, buffers are typically managed by the city. Buffers are required on new or redevelopments in the city, but not necessarily older developments. There is a minimum buffer width based on the classification of the pond or wetland in the city's wetland protection plan. Typically, it's 20 to 25 feet. And then I always like to remind folks that no fertilizer can be used within 20 feet of a pond or a lake, just due to the increased risk of that fertilizer ending up in that water body. All right. With that, I would take any questions.
I will start. So you have water clarity goals. Why the water clarity goals on each individual lake? For example, some are 1.3 meters, some are 1.8 meters. Why not all lakes are completely clear, or all lakes are 0.1 meters? Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, part of it is due to whether it's a shallow or a deep lake. So Crystal Lake is a deeper lake, so you have much better ability to have better water quality there. It's just more volume for all the runoff to kind of spread out or dissipate. And deeper lakes also, the phosphorus ends up trapped in the lower portion of the lake. In a shallow lake, they're wind driven and get mixed multiple times throughout the season, which brings phosphorus to the surface and makes it more available for algae. So some of those factors relate to those standards. Then also other factors like the amount of watershed in a particular lake. If there's a lot bigger watershed relative to the lake size, it's going to be harder to achieve a certain goal. So there's studies done on each lake called use attainability studies that look at the various factors, and they include folks who live on the lake and the goals of the folks who live on the lake to determine what that clarity goal should be and what's feasible for each water body.
How often, so you showed the measurements taken for both clarity and phosphorus. It's a June through September average. Like, how often in that time period are the measurements actually taken? Is it once a month? Is it once a week?
It's about every other week. Might be slightly more spread out than that, but it's more than once a month.
Okay. So moving on to alum management, you said that you talked about feasibility for alum management. What makes a lake feasible for alum management? For example, why not Sunset Pond, since it has struggles with phosphorus?
Yeah, so for feasibility, one, they look at the watershed runoff, so how much phosphorus is currently flowing into the lake. They want to make sure that the watershed loading of phosphorus is in good control to make sure that you're going to get good value from your alum treatment, because if phosphorus is flowing in so quick, then it kind of replaces the benefit of the alum. So that would be one factor. Residency time of the water is another. Some lakes, the water kind of flushes out fairly quickly, which makes it hard to apply alum, because some of that alum may be flushed out of the lake fairly quickly. So that's another factor. Sunset Pond as well, it has been meeting standards. So alum treatments were first considered for lakes that were maybe not meeting standards, like the impaired waters, or close to not meeting standards for longer.
Okay. Sorry, I've got a couple more. The Keller Lake Detention Basin, great idea, by the way. That's fabulous engineering. Where you said the muck has to get removed occasionally, where does the muck go? Like, once it's removed?
Good question.
Yeah, so I think it's probably a land line fill. I wasn't specifically involved with that, but a lot of times if we're doing storm pond sediment removal, the sediment is tested to see what's in it, and a lot of times it has to be disposed of in a lined landfill due to potential pollution. So I'd assume it was something like that for that system.
Okay. there are lined landfills in Burnsville, remind me. Yep, the main one. Is it lined? Not a question you may know, it's fine.
Not sure.
I was more thinking out loud than anything. Last question. So there are different buffer standards for your definitions of ponds and lakes. It's interesting because, like, what is the overall definition of a pond versus a lake? For example, Twin Lake is actually smaller than Wood Pond, which doesn't make any sense to me. In acreage, anyway.
Yeah, so there is a standard for the state. I don't know if I know it for sure on the exact acreage, but the state has a standard for what they consider a public water. So I believe it's based on acreage, and if it's a certain acreage, it's considered a public water, and then state standards apply to it at that point. And then if it's not a public water, and then typically it would fall into the category of the city's wetland protection plan.
Okay. So the word pond or lake doesn't necessarily have anything to do with it. Got it, okay.
So it's like a public water is the terminology that would make it under the state standard.
Yep.
Okay, I'm done now, I'm sorry.
Great questions, thank you. Others?
I have a couple. With regard to the muck on Keller Lake, the amount, what's the maximum capacity of muck that could be collected? Like, was it half full? Was it 3/4 full, or like not much?
I'm not sure. Our engineering department are the folks that manage those systems, so they ran that project. I'm not quite sure how close to capacity it was.
Okay, it's fine. Just curiosity more than anything. Are there any criteria differences regarding the amount of watershed around like lakes? Like, are there different restrictions because of a wider watershed or anything like that? Or is there considerations with that?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, just curious how all of that, because with a wider watershed, you're getting more potential for pollution no matter what, right? Like, there's just more things happening, so it just makes me think about how can that be more proactively addressed, like with the surrounding, I don't know.
With a wider watershed, then some of those water bodies would take more work to manage them. You probably have to find more projects that you can install within that watershed to reduce the phosphorus flow. So from a management perspective, that's kind of how I would look at it.
Okay. And with regard to invasive plants, what do you see is why are they coming, or it just once they're introduced, they just keep multiplying like mad, or are they still getting introduced from boats or other ways?
Yeah, the two main ones that we have here in Burnsville have been present for a long time, so they're just in the lake now and proliferating, kind of like in upland areas. You may be familiar with buckthorn. It's here. It's well entrenched. That's similar with our aquatic invasive species.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
With Alamagna, there we go. What is the biggest concern that's kind of keeping it on that impaired waters list? Do we know, is that erosion? Is it lawn fertilizers?
So the biggest thing that is keeping it on is the phosphorus levels in the lake. So I mentioned it has the three parameters that relate to it being on the impaired waters list: phosphorus levels, chlorophyll A, and clarity. So phosphorus is the one that's kind of driving those other parameters. Chlorophyll A is kind of a measure of algae. Clarity really relates to the amount of algae that's in the water column. So the amount of phosphorus that's in the lake is really what's keeping it on the impaired waters list, and what we need to get it off was to see a more consistent trend where it's meeting those state standards regularly.
And where's that phosphorus coming from?
So two sources. One is from the watershed. So a lot of that stormwater pollution, there is natural phosphorus from leaves and all that type of stuff as well. But the main problem would be stormwater pollution. And then, as we kind of talked about, there's also phosphorus just in the lake. That's the natural process. There's always phosphorus in there, but it's also built up over time from stormwater pollution. So you have kind of the two different sources, that external load of phosphorus and then the internal load.
So it's really getting down on that stormwater, what's going in there and what are we trying to keep out from all of those places that kind of surround the lake and around the watershed, correct?
Correct, yep, and I think where the cities are at currently is there's been a lot of work done on that external load in the watershed, which is why we're looking more at that internal load of phosphorus. And the hope is that with the internal load of phosphorus that we'll see improved clarity and reduced phosphorus, and a more maintained clarity in phosphorus levels by sort of switching it from more algae dominated to more of a clear water state.
Can you pull up the map again of that lake and where the watershed is, please? Thank you. Because that's a lot of space.
Yeah.
That kind of helps, I think, paint a really nice picture of where all the water, like thinking about all of the water drains or the sewer system. And just how much of that really impacts this one body of water. It's kind of amazing.
Do all the people who live in this watershed, are they aware that they're affecting this lake? Like the ones that go further out? Like, is there some communication that's ever sent, or I don't know if they're ever, like, no, you know?
The city does try to do education on water quality and using our city newsletter and other methods. So we do try to get the word out about, everyone lives in a watershed. It is challenging because this is one watershed, but all of Burnsville is a watershed, and it's all
Right.
going somewhere. So
Yeah.
it's hard to do targeted education to everybody, other than through some of our mass methods like social media or our city newsletter or things like that. But we do try to get the word out that everywhere you live, you're in a watershed, even if you're not right next to the lake.
And that one's tough because look at all those main roads that are right
Yeah.
next to it. And then I think of like gasoline drips or whatever it is.
I have a bunch of questions.
Go.
Because this is something I'm really interested in. It's why I got on the commissions I really care about. We're really lucky to live in a city that has so many great lakes and ponds, and so I think it's really important that we do take care of them. So this buffer of 50 feet that the DNR deals with, how do they track it? Do they even track it? Do they just make a thing that says, oh, for 50 feet, this is, I can't remember the word you were using for it. The buffer is like the perennial plant buffer. Like if they're not tracking it, then what?
How are they enforcing it?
Yeah, how?
Is what you're asking.
That's what thank
Yeah.
you.
I guess I can't say the DNR. I don't get involved with that specifically. That'd really be a question for the DNR. I do know that they do some like remote or aerial photography monitoring. I think that buffer especially comes into play along streams and rivers and in agricultural areas where they can see more quickly whether there's any vegetation present certain times of year or not. But I can't, since I'm not involved with it, answer that too
DNR,
specifically.
yeah.
Yep.
And then, so my same question I have is how does the city manage that too with the ponds, with the 20-foot buffer zone? Because, just curious what that answer is.
Yeah, so typically if it's on a new or redevelopment, there would be a process and a management plan for that property that shows where that buffer should be. And then if it's an older property, it may not be required to have a buffer. But if there is a required buffer and it may not be present, we typically would deal with that. If there was a complaint notified to the city, then we would follow up.
So how old would the neighborhood be for them to not be required to have the 20-foot buffer?
I'm not sure offhand.
That's
Yeah.
okay. I
I
would,
could follow up with that information.
that'd be great, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have another question.
Keep going.
Sorry, but this is something I really care about, so when you said there's low native plant diversity, that made me think, because work in regenerative agriculture. So I'm thinking there's regenerative practices for soil, right? And so is there like regenerative practices for water so that you don't have to put in inputs like alum and, whatever else you guys need to use? Like you said something about an herbicide treatment. Like if you can get the lake or pond healthy enough that it should be able to sustain itself healthily. Curious, like, I don't know what that is for water. I just know that there is that for soil.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal, is to have a more self-sustaining system on the lake. It is challenging in a fairly unnatural environment with so much stormwater runoff. But I think, the process that I'm kind of talking about, reducing the phosphorus that's coming into the lake, is going to help rebalance some of those factors. And if you can get the water to be clear, get more plant growth, then that kind of helps support that clear water state. And in general, if you can reduce the amount of invasive species and get more native plants back, there is some thought that the invasive species are thriving under nutrient-rich conditions, so they may be the quickest to spread and uptake phosphorus and put it into expansive growth, which is why sometimes they create a lot of nuisance recreation issues. So there some thought that if you can reduce the amount of phosphorus, it may reduce some of the ability for some of those native species or invasive species to thrive. And we do see on other water bodies that if there are more native plants present, there's, say, milfoil may be present, but it may not be quite as problematic on areas where it's one of the only species there, then it really can thrive.
Got another one?
I mean, I feel like I should give someone else a chance.
You can keep going. It's just
Keep
fine.
going.
Do it.
All right.
Caleb's got all night, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm also curious what the herbicide treatment is that you use in the lakes.
Yeah, so the herbicide is a product called Flumi. It's just like in upland areas, there's different herbicides that you can use, and there's some that are approved for aquatic areas. So it's just a type of herbicide that's approved for aquatic areas. And it works well to control the specific species that we're targeting, which is curly-leaf pondweed. In the DNR, you have to get permits to apply herbicide, and we work with a licensed contractor. And you try to apply the herbicide for curly-leaf pondweed early in the season, before the water reaches a certain temperature, because a lot more of the native species aren't active yet. So you can be a little more targeted to that species.
I think I asked my important question.
I have one question. A few years ago, it was kind of a big thing with the city of Burnsville, with goldfish in the lakes. Is that still a thing?
Yeah, so we had a couple years ago a survey done on Keller Lake, and then it found some really large goldfish in Keller Lake. We did do another survey last year on Keller Lake to kind of take another look at where that was at. And I should mention previously, the survey that was done in 2021 found that there were some really large goldfish, but that they probably weren't at ecologically damaging population. So they're present, but not so many that we'd anticipate there being a lot of water quality impacts from them. We did another survey this past year on Keller Lake and found that it does still have some goldfish. There was a winter kill that killed a lot of the big ones. Now there's quite a few smaller ones though, so they did have a chance to reproduce at some point. So we're also looking at the possibility of doing some goldfish removal and also different predator fish stocking to try to manage that. It's the only lake that we're currently aware of that has a significant amount of goldfish.
There's a little pond by my house, and at that time, you could see them in there. I mean, and I just noticed over the last year, I don't really see any in there anymore, so.
Catch them and give them away at Fire Muster.
Wow.
Yeah.
Someone's quite
So I actually have a couple of questions. Where did 50 feet and 20 feet come from? Because I would think that knowing how the water is, going, oh, well, you can't put, fertilizer down 20 feet from the lake, doesn't do anything for the previous several thousand feet where it's getting inundated with fertilizers. I think we'd all like to go, well, if people just stop putting fertilizer on their lawns or phosphorus on their lawns, then a lot of this would go away. I don't know that that's a reasonable assumption. And the second thing is, what's the line? At what point do you go, well, if you're in a watershed, we shouldn't do this? So I think can see where I'm kind of going with this. But it's interesting that somebody somewhere came up with a number of 20 feet. If you're beyond that, you're okay. So it'd be interesting to know where that, what was the data that drove that number, that helped arrive at that number?
And then to add on to that, why only watersheds and not all lawns, since the concern is the stormwater drain runoffs?
Right.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure specifically where those numbers came from. They were developed prior to me being here in Burnsville.
Sure.
I do know there's a balance. People want to they have a property, they want to use,
Sure.
a good portion of their property. So I imagine that was part of the factor, trying to come up with something that's beneficial to that wetland or pond, but also does allow people to use a good portion of their property.
And then I remember this from our discussions last year, the amount of phosphorus and other nutrient loads that simply come from the fact that lawn waste, leaves, et cetera, get put into the storm system. And Lord knows in the fall, in my neighborhood, they're just, the storm drains get clogged. There's so much leaf material. Should we be looking at ways we can combat that issue? That, maybe the street sweepers and the vacuums come by more frequently during the fall to try to reduce the load that's getting dumped into the storm system.
Yeah, I think reducing that load is definitely important and something the city has been working on. I do know the street sweepers do quite a few different visits per season, so they're pretty active and remove tons and tons of material that way. So I think they're doing a great job at removing that material. And I think a part of it is for homeowners too, to work on through education. The city does offer a water quality grant, so homeowners can install their own rain garden. They can put in rain barrels. They could add a native planting, or they could put enhance a buffer around their pond. That grants for up to $1,000. You can get $250 from the Soil and Water Conservation District as well. And there's classes that are offered where people can go and attend and learn all about that. So I think there's some good opportunities for people to get involved that way. Right. Then I will also say there's a fairly new program called the Adopt a Drain program. It's not run by the city, it's run by another organization, but you can sign up. You can see a map online of the different storm drains that are around. You can sign up to adopt the drain or a couple drains that's near your property. Then they ask you to go out periodically, and if there's buildup of leaves or different material around there, you can remove that material before it gets down into the storm drain. So nice program for people to try to deal with that issue and also become hopefully advocates in their neighborhood too.
Sure. That's great. That's great. Are we questioned out?
I have one more.
Perfect. Perfect.
I'm just curious about the coordination with Apple Valley. How does that look, and how often do you guys interact? And what are they doing that maybe Burnsville's not doing, or vice versa?
Yeah, so that is organized through what's called a joint powers agreement between the two cities, which is a legal agreement passed by councils that kind of organizes how we share responsibilities. Burnsville takes the lead on projects related to Alamagnet and Keller Lake. Then Apple Valley takes the lead on projects related to Lac Lavon, because all three of those are within both watersheds, or both cities. So we have lead staff for those lakes, but both cities are involved in all decisions. So we meet regularly and talk if we're going to be doing something, talk with both cities to make sure everyone's on the same page about what's being done.
Do the cities share the cost?
Yes, they do.
Caleb, you've been very patient with us. Thank you for and terrific information. And thank you so much for presenting both of these reports to us. We really do appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the questions.
I believe now we are on to the miscellaneous section of our agenda. It looks like the next meeting is commissioner training.
That is correct.
Okay. And that'll be on June the 18th.
Yes.
And for those who've already gone through your training, I came back for the second one last time. It's still very informative, so if you can make it, that's good. I'd like to thank our audience for coming in tonight. Thank you very much for being here and being a part. And at this time, I would like to request a call for the adjournment of our May.
I move to adjourn.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay. I just don't want to be done yet.
Near unanimous consent, we find ourselves adjourned. Thank you, everybody.